It's really happening. The New York Times is reporting that for the first time, young men are officially more religious than young women. In a survey of over 5,000 Gen Zers conducted by the American Enterprise Institute, 40% of women now describe themselves as religiously unaffiliated. However, when it comes to young men, that number drops to just 34%. Now, why that's so fascinating is because researchers found that in every other age group, men are the ones more likely to be unaffiliated with any religious identity. In fact, that tracks with what researchers have found for decades. Women are consistently more religious than men, a finding, frankly, so reliable that some scholars have characterized it as something akin to a universal human truth. Well, when it comes to Gen Z, that simply no longer holds. And it's not just religion or Christianity in general that young men are attracted to. They're being particularly drawn to Eastern Orthodox Christianity. This according to a recent report from the New York Post. Now, obviously for me, this was fascinating. Many of you know that I'm an Orthodox convert. I became Orthodox 18 years ago. And what this Post article points out is that for many young men, bottom line, Protestant churches have become too liberal, with the rainbow flags and BLM monikers, and Episcopal churches, for example. And evangelical churches have become too effeminate, too commercialized, too consumerist. Many evangelical churches meet at movie theaters on Sunday mornings or in malls or in churches that are built to look like movie theaters and malls. And the style of worship is very emotive. It's very tear-jerky with music that's more akin to, soft rock, kind of Christianized Air Supply. And young men, frankly, want nothing to do with it. And yet, they need something. Young men are craving a vibrant religious tradition. And this is because young men today are part of what many are calling the Jordan Peterson generation. They've been very much influenced by reconnecting with the archetypical themes that reawaken a sense of mythical manhood that they find innately compelling, as if it were in their very DNA and they didn't know it, which, by the way, it is. That's precisely the Jungian framework that Jordan Peterson, at least in part, draws from. In fact, the Swiss theorist Jean Gebser called it the mythical structure of human consciousness, which he sees as innate. In other words, a mythical conception of the world isn't just some evolutionary throwback that we can chuck now that we've got science and reason. That, ironically, is a modernist myth. When all is said and done, mythos, as the ancient Greeks would call it, constitutes the stories, the meta-narratives that reveal reality at its deepest, most meaningful level. And the human mind, frankly, can't make sense of the world without a mythological structure. Gebser, Jung, Peterson, they all argue that mythical structure of consciousness is still very much there in the modern mind at a foundational level, but it's largely been buried by decades of modernist propaganda that claimed that enchantment had been replaced by enlightenment. Religion was forever replaced by reason. Myth forever eclipsed by modernity. And so with that ironically modern myth shattered, young men in particular, are becoming reacquainted with epic and mythic themes that are collectively reawakening their sense of classical manhood. And you won't believe what the woke legacy media is saying about that. This is going to blow you away. But first, gang, if you have not yet secured the deed to your home, you need to click on that link below right now and protect yourself and your loved ones. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it. The problem is that the deeds to all our homes are now online, and criminals are free to find your deed, forge your signature, refile as the new owner of your home, take tons of loans out using your home's equity, and then stick you with all the debt. But that's where our good friends over at Home Title Lock come in. They are simply amazing. Home Title Lock gives you the peace of mind that the deed to your home is absolutely and completely protected. Click on that link below right now. Use promo code TurleyTalks. Then all you got to do is enter your address for your no-obligation home title scan and see if you've already been a victim of deed theft. That's a $100 value, absolutely, totally free with my promo code TurleyTalks. Do not wait for the worst to happen, only to regret you didn't do something about it when you could have. Do what I've done. Do what countless patriots have done. Click on that link below right now and secure your home today. Rachel Maddow recently got mocked for calling attention to a new far-right threat to our nation. According to Rachel Maddow, that radical right threat is none other than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Maddow was noticing that J.D. Vance had named his tech company Palantir, which is one of the several indestructible crystal balls that enabled those with magical skill to see events happening far away in Middle Earth. Now, obviously, at one level, Maddow is simply absurd. Plenty of people who are not far right love the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But at another level, you know what? Believe it or not, she was on to something. The mythos of the Lord of the Rings does indeed resonate, particularly with young men, precisely because of this remythologized dynamic that's breaking through the cold, sterile, and increasingly woke modernist world. And with the reawakening of these ancient, distinctively male archetypes, young men are looking for a faith tradition, a true religion, wherein their remythologized imaginations can flourish. And lo and behold, they walk into an Orthodox church, and it's literally like stepping into Middle Earth. They're surrounded by a mystical world whose traditions draw directly and unchangingly from that ancient world wherein the very myths that they've recently encountered once reigned supreme. And they're absolutely blown away. They've simply never seen or experienced anything like it. And the result is that we're seeing record numbers of conversions to the Orthodox Church. A recent survey of Orthodox churches around the country found that parishes saw a 78% increase in converts in 2022 compared with pre-pandemic levels in 2019, with young men comprising the vast majority joining the church since 2020. They're first finding that their mythopoetic imaginations are sparked by people like Jordan Peterson, and then they're finding the faith that goes along with that mythopoetic imagination, one that sees manhood as an image of Christ, who as the incarnate Son of God came to earth to slay the dragon that holds the cosmos captive. That's what Christ does on the cross. He slays the serpent. He crushes the skull of Satan on Golgotha, the place of the skull. And so this is why manhood, redeemed manhood, is historically associated with dragon killing, right? The form of St. George, or the Nordic myth of Beowulf. This is why England has their cross of St. George on their flag. It's a symbol, at least in part, of redeemed masculinity, that men are called to be dragon slayers, to protect their brides from the satanic serpents. You know, it's no coincidence that the Promise Keepers are coming back. Have you heard about this? Do you know this? Do you remember the Promise Keepers? The Promise Keepers men's movement? They were a men's ministry that reached their height in the 1990s, the early 2000s. It was founded by Bill McCartney, head football coach of the University of Colorado. He started a ministry for men calling on men to recommit their lives to Christ, recommit to their marriages, focus on fidelity, honoring their wives, shepherding their families and children. They were huge at one point. They were selling out arenas all over the country. In fact, they had the famous Stand in the Gap rally at the Washington, D.C. Mall. That was probably their biggest gathering. I was there, actually. This was back in, 1997. I remember I got a serious sunburn on my face because I was standing outside the whole day. It was a beautiful sunny day. Millions of men came out. I think one count was over 2 million. Well, they're back. They're back for the Trump era, as the New York Times puts it, which makes complete sense, not only because of this dynamic of remythologization, right? Particularly the reawakening of classical manhood, but because, if you think it through, Trump, in many ways, embodies precisely this kind of masculinity. Trump is seen in a very mythical and yet real way as a dragon slayer, literally a swamp killer. Men, particularly young men, see both their nation and their manhood under threat from nefarious woke forces that seek to undermine both, and Trump is a Caesar-like figure who's risen to this occasion to crush that serpent. And the key here is that Trump is perceived as a hero not merely because of what he's doing for our nation, but what he's doing for men. He's restoring to us men the dignity of what it means to be a true man, and as such, to rescue our nation from the forces that would destroy it together as one, and thereby not just recover our country, but recover our mythical manhood as well. This is why I don't see it as any coincidence that the Promise Keepers Men's Ministry is seeing a revival in the Trump era. The two fit together like a glove. And so, with the help of Trump and Jordan Peterson, a distinctively masculine remythologization is awakening. And as such, a new era of redeemed manhood really does appear to be rising. One that involves young men taking their place as servant defenders of all things good and true.